I just walked downstairs with a huge stack of books and I'm out of breath, but also my camera batteries are dead. So I just decided to use my phone and film in a random spot. This is going well. So the first question is the best book that you've read in 2021. And of course, I'm not gonna be able to pick one book. So I decided to pick 3. The first book probably won't come as any surprise if you've been here since the beginning of this year, and that's Jade City by Fonda Lee. I read this at the beginning of the year. I think I read it in January. I read it for a video where the library gave me recommendations based off books I've previously loved, and they recommended this book because of Black Sun, which was my favorite book of 2020. And I thought this was a perfect suggestion because now this is my favorite book of 2021 so far. I continuously think about these characters. I was immersed into this world pretty quickly, and this took twists and turns that I was not expecting. And I think that Fonda Lee is probably one of the best fantasy writers that I've read this year, which is kind of a spoiler for a future question, but Jade City is probably hands down my favorite book this year. But I also read Heavy by Kiese Layman this year, and while I don't suggest it, I consumed this in a day. I could not put it down, and I don't cry very easily at books, and I just remember I was making dinner while listening to the rest of the audiobook. I think I was, I don't know, a chapter from finishing, and I was cutting some vegetables and my partner walks in and I'm just sobbing. And he was like, "Are you okay?" Like, I just finished this book. So I definitely have to say Heavy. I loved the format of this book in particular. It's a letter written to his mom, and I loved the discussions that he was having in here. And much like the title implies, it's very heavy. There's happy moments, but a majority of this is dealing with trauma and being a Black man in the South specifically. I just loved this book, and I immediately went out and bought a copy as soon as I finished the audiobook. And I also bought all of his published work. So, and then lastly, I had to mention Sorrowland because I recently read this and was completely absorbed in it. This gave me everything that I could have asked for. It's weird. I definitely don't suggest this to everybody because it's weird and it's creepy and it's more on the horror side. So I've recently, in the last like 2 years, really have been getting into horror, especially body horror and like creepy supernatural type horror books. And this was perfect. Question number 2 is the best sequel that you've read this year. Again, this is not going to come as any surprise, but also I think it's one of the few sequels that I've actually read this year. It's Jade War. I don't have much to say that I didn't say about the first book, but I do think that Jade War could have or should be my favorite book of the year. But I also think that Jade City should take that spot because it's the setup to this grander story, and so I think it has a special place in my heart. But Jade War, objectively, I liked better, and I liked where this plot is going. I'm not mentally prepared for Jade Legacy, but yeah, this has to be the best sequel that I've read this year so far. Question number 3 is new releases that you want to read but haven't. I mean, question number 4 is most anticipated release for the second half of the year, and the book that immediately comes to my mind is She Who Became the Sun. I'm really looking forward to this book, but I also have kind of been trying not to pay attention to too many new releases for the second half of the year because of the last clip that you saw, you know, of all of these. Oh my god. So I'm trying to tone it down a little bit, but I definitely have had She Who Became the Sun on my radar for a while, probably since the beginning of the year. So I've entered many giveaways and I've requested it on NetGalley. So it has to be my most anticipated for the second half of this year. Question number 5 is your biggest disappointment of the year. So I have 2. The first one I haven't talked about because I'm really behind on wrap-ups. Don't worry, I'm aware, but that one is A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe. And this was pitched to me on multiple occasions from multiple people as being very similar to The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which, if you didn't know, is one of my all-time favorite books probably ever. And that's like a fluffy space opera, but it also has a lot of discussions about humanity and the choices that we make and the way that we perceive people people and decide what's morally correct or incorrect and how humans tend to repeat history. But at the same time, it's really feel good and I loved the characters so much. And that's what this was pitched to me as. That's, in my opinion, not true. I hated this. I got 200 pages into this hoping with each page that this would get better, and it did not. I hated the writing style. It felt so cheesy to me, and it's not that The Long Way to a Small Grey Planet isn't cheesy at times, but this just felt like when you're trying too hard to be funny and it just comes off as absolutely not funny. That's how this felt. I didn't connect to any of the characters, and I will say I do understand why people would say that if you liked The Long Way to a Small Grey Planet, you might like this book, because I definitely saw a lot of parallels to specific characters in The Long Way to a Small Grey Planet, where these characters are very much kind of copies of those characters. I'm not saying that the author copied the characters, they're just similar. In The Long Way to a Small Grey Planet, one of my favorite characters is Chef, and he is the cook. That's why his name is Chef. But he's also somebody who imparts a lot of wisdom, and he is somebody who's supposed to kind of play that role of an elder. And he's one of my favorite characters in the first book, The Long Way to a Small Grey Planet, because each book in that series follows different characters. There is somebody in here who is a chef or a cook. And I don't know, I just didn't like this. I didn't like the plot of it, but mainly it was the writing, and I hated it. This one may not come as a surprise to anybody, but also when I did a vlog on it, it was a spoilery vlog. So I don't know if this is gonna be surprising or not, but it's Rule of Wolves. I did not enjoy this. I gave it a generous 3 stars. I gave it a 3 stars because I really do love the characters in the Grisha verse, and a lot of those characters are in here, but this just wasn't it. I can't really go into too much detail because even King of Scars is a book that I can't talk much about for the sake of spoilers for anyone who hasn't read any of the books in the Grishaverse, because the King of Scars duology is the one series in the Grishaverse that actually contains all of the spoilers. So I'm not gonna say too much, but I was very disappointed in this book. Question number 6 is your biggest surprise. I think that has to be Upon a Burning Throne, which I buddy read with Rachel and Casey, and I think we all kind of felt like it was a surprise of how much we loved it and how obsessed we got with this book. I think if I were to explain this book, a lot of people would feel intimidated by the amount of plot lines and characters that you follow in here, but I think what's so surprising about it is how easy it is to follow all of these characters and understand what is happening, but also how easy it is to just fall into this world and be so immersed in these characters' lives and what's happening. So I was very surprised by this because I see really mixed reviews about this book. So I was surprised that I just like fell into it and absolutely loved it and wanted to be in this world all the time. After leaving it as well, I wanted to be right back in it. Question number 7 is favorite new author, and I have to say Fonda Lee, but I could also say Kiese Layman or Tracy Lindbergh, who wrote Birdie, which was also in like my top 5 favorite books of this year. It's a book that I definitely don't recommend to everybody because you have to set aside your Western ideas of storytelling and go into this with no expectations of what the story is going to be, except that it's going to be really beautiful and heartbreaking. And I would really love to read more by Tracy Lindbergh. So I think those are the 3 that come to mind that are actually new authors to me. Question number 8 is newest fictional crush. I just don't. Question number 9 is newest favorite character. And for the sake of changing things up, I'm not going to talk about Jade City or Jade War, even though I could. I think I want to talk about the characters from On a Sunbeam because I actually loved all of these characters a lot, and I loved that they were a found family. Funny enough, after talking about my biggest disappointment, A Big Ship at the Edge of the Universe, where it was pitched to me as something like The Long Way to a Small Grey Planet, I actually think that this is more similar to The Long Way to a Small Grey Planet for a lot of reasons. And I think if you like graphic novels and fluffy space stories and you enjoyed The Long Way to a Small Grey Planet, you will probably really enjoy On a Sunbeam. All of the characters are heartwarming. I love the way that their relationship dynamics work in here and the family aspect of their relationships. I just felt really good reading this. Not only did I love all of the characters, and not only did I love the found family aspect in here, I loved the relationships in here. They were really sweet and healthy and just beautiful little sapphic relationships. I love this book so much. Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. And obviously I could say heavy because I was a mess, but I'm gonna go with Crying in Hmart because this just hit really, really close to home. And I think one page in, I was bawling. So Crying in Hmart is a memoir. It's Michelle Zauner's memoir. And she is basically talking about the experience of losing her mother to cancer and how they used to connect with food. And I just really connected with this writing so deeply. It actually put me in the weirdest headspace because I lost my mom to cancer and I took care of her as well. There was so much that resonated with me and there was so much that was expressed in here that I've never been able to put into words before, and I've never been able to express them the way that Michelle Zauner was able to express grief and the anger that comes with grief and the deep loneliness that comes with grief. I don't know, I highly recommend this, but I also caution people going into this because it's very raw and real. And I think it's a book that's not written for other people necessarily. It was definitely a book that felt like a healing moment for Michelle Zauner. But I think that's what made it so impactful for me, was because it was so personal. So yeah, I was crying a lot through this book. Question 11 is a book that made you happy, and something I've learned about myself is that I read a lot of books that don't make me happy. I don't read a lot of feel-good things, is what I'm learning about myself. So I do have to say On a Sunbeam, because this really made me happy and I enjoyed being in this world and it was so feel-good. Question number 12 is the most beautiful book that you've bought so far this year. I mean, question number 13 is what books do you need to read by the end of the year? Let's just insert that little clip of me earlier. Question number 14 is what is your most favorite video you've posted this year? And I mean, I think I have two that like I think about that process and how much fun I had making them. And the first one has to be reading the Shaded Choice Award winners. The Shaded Choice Award was a new book award that a few booktubers made because there was a huge lack of diversity within the Goodreads Choice Awards. And so they made the Shaded Choice Awards, and I had so much fun reading those books, as well as following the process of them creating this awards and going to the live show and seeing who won. So I definitely loved making that video. And then I think probably using the library's recommendation service, because I am a librarian and I always try to utilize the library in different ways because we're so fortunate to have a great library system here. And it helped me find one of my all-time favorite books, which was Jade City. So I did have a lot of fun filming that one, even though I actually didn't love all of the books. I just had a great time filming that one. Okay, so that's my mid-year book tag, and it's freaking hot in this house. So I'm gonna go eat a ton of watermelon, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.